All right. And welcome to College Conversations. This is a webinar series designed to help New Hampshire students and families get to know the colleges and universities right here in their backyard. Each institution has its own personality, strengths, opportunities, and we just want to bring information from the people that know the institutions best, the people that work in their admissions office, to help you find the school that's a good fit for you. If you're somebody supporting a student, a guardian, a school counselor, the information that you can bring to those people that you serve. My name is Matt Wallace. I serve as the Vice President of Education Career Pathways at Granite Edvance. And today I'm with Jackie from Dartmouth College. Um, Dartmouth, located in the Upper Valley of New Hampshire. So, Jackie, why don't we jump right in? We'll have you introduce yourself and yeah, share a little bit about your background.
Awesome. I'm Jackie Pageau. I am an associate director of admissions here at Dartmouth College. I use she, her pronouns. I also am an alum of Dartmouth College, so I graduated in 2018, and I grew up in Lebanon, New Hampshire, a hop, skip, and a jump down the road from Dartmouth. So I am very entrenched in the New Hampshire world. Never imagined myself coming to Dartmouth as a student. Never even really imagined myself being someone that works at Dartmouth someday. So it's been a really amazing journey to get here at Dartmouth. I do a lot of different things. The one that's maybe most relevant here is that I'm our program director for the STARS program, which is small town and rural students. It's a collection of 32 colleges and universities in the US that are kind of doing some more targeted outreach to small town and rural students to make sure that they know schools like ours are options. And those schools range everything from the Dartmouth to some bigger state schools, a lot of options there. But just knowing that that's a different audience of folks who are looking at colleges and universities and doing outreach. So I do a lot of work with the STARS program. And I also do a lot of work with our arts programming. So I do a lot of liaising with the Hopkins Center for the Arts. If you've ever been up this way and seen a great show or a great performance, I do a lot of our work with the arts folks on campus while doing all the other wonderful things an admissions officer gets to do.
That is many things without a doubt. So keeping this really high level for someone who this might be their first kind of experience learning about Dartmouth, right? Most people have probably heard the name Dartmouth College, right? You guys have great name recognition, but if it's their first time hearing about Dartmouth, um, tell us a little bit about Dartmouth and the type of students that excel at your school.
Yeah, we're a pretty small school. We're the smallest member of the Ivy League, which is primarily a sports conference. We have a little over 4,000 undergraduate students at any given time, so a little over 1,000 students in every class. We are technically a university because we do have four graduate schools on our campus. So we do have a medical school, an engineering school, a business school, and a school for advanced studies. But all of those graduate students combined is less than our undergraduate student population. So the undergrads are really who you're going to feel that you are bumping into and running into around campus while you are visiting. Campus pictured behind me in this lovely virtual background. We do a couple of things different than other colleges that you're going to see. So one is our location, right? We're in this beautiful rural valley moment right on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. We're about 2 hours north of Boston, 3 hours south of Montreal, which gives us a really interesting place to be as we bring students from all over the country and all over the world. So we have a really diverse student body on our campus. About 15% of students are international students every year. About the same percentage, 14 to 15% are rural students every year on our campus. Students from all 50 states. I think students are speaking over 120 different languages currently at home on our campus. So it's just a really amazing group of students that we have here. And we are a liberal arts college. So the goal of a liberal arts college is to teach students how to think, to teach you critical thinking skills, to expose you to a lot of different types of ways of thinking, so that when you're presented with a challenge or presented with a problem in your life after college, you have a lot of different things to pull out of your tool belt to attack that problem. So you're not going to find a program like a nursing program or a radiology program at a school like Dartmouth. We are going to have kind of more broad majors that you're going to decide in your sophomore year. So you're going to apply more broadly. And then you're going to take classes across the curriculum. So, for example, I was a theater major. I took lots of lovely theater classes, but I also took science classes and technology classes and literature classes and classes about religion and motivation and value. And so I got to dive deep into the subject that was most interesting to me. And then I also got to learn how to think in a lot of different ways so that now I can be an admissions officer, which is not at all related to my theater degree, but I have the skills and tools to do so, and many other jobs that folks go on to after they graduate. So that's kind of my rambly introduction, but y'all know New Hampshire, so I don't have to give you so much about the place.
That was awesome. And yeah, I feel like as a former admissions professional myself, we come from a very wide ranging background and find our ways to the profession in unique and interesting ways. But it is a great profession to be part of. So, can you walk us through the application part process at Dartmouth? Being an IB, being highly selective, I think there's some unique nuances to what you all are looking for in what your process looks like at Dartmouth. So I'd love to deep dive into that.
Definitely. So we accept two different types of applications at Dartmouth. We accept the QuestBridge application, which is primarily for high achieving low income students. And we also accept the Common application. So that's where you're going to see a lot of different colleges coming together. And we are on the Common app. We are going to ask for most of the typical things you're seeing from other schools. So things like a college essay, a list of your activities, some recommendation letters from folks. And the thing to know about how we read those applications is that at Dartmouth, we're reading in a holistic way. So we're not looking for one piece of data. We're not just checking your GPA and your test score and saying, great, make a decision. We're looking at every single piece of that application. So it's called holistic admissions. And we are reading everything from the stories you're sharing in your essays. We also have some short answers that are specifically for Dartmouth that you'll answer for us so we can get a sense of why you think Dartmouth is a great fit for you. And then we're reading those recommendations, we're reading through your activities, we're reading through maybe an interview if you do an interview, we're looking at an art supplement if you submit an art supplement, we're looking at what classes you took, how you did in those classes, we're looking at your test scores, we're looking at all of those things together to get to know you as much as we possibly can because we are creating ideally a class of a little over 1,000 students who are bringing like the most interesting lived experiences, personalities, and just ideas for the future to our campus. So we are trying to make the most interesting group of students here. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the weeds as you're looking at applying to colleges where people are like, oh, what does Jaclyn at Dartmouth want me to put in my application? How do I fit into that box? And that's not what we're looking for, right? We want you to be the most you could possibly be because we need 1,100 very unique yous to fill this class of students. So when you're thinking about applying to a school like a Dartmouth that's in this kind of highly selective band of colleges, the best thing you can do is to be the most yourself you can possibly be, to be entirely authentic in your application, and then use every piece of the application to help us learn about you, right? If you answer that big college essay question and all the supplemental questions all about the same topic, I'm probably not going to learn that much about you. Or if you write a beautiful essay about how much you love your grandmother, I'm going to learn a lot about your grandma. She's probably really wonderful. But how do you tell us stories about yourself? And then just putting forward all the other things you've done, right? What activities have you done? By the time you get to senior year, most of the activities are already done. You're just writing them down. Same with recommendations, right? Who knows you the best? Who can write us a really great letter, just letting us know a little bit more about you from a different perspective? That's what we're looking for in the process. And there are a lot of steps. You can find them all on the website of kind of exactly what those different components and pieces are. But I think that's the major difference you're going to see in this highly selective college space is that we're really looking to get to know you fully through this application. So you're going to want to take some time to think about like, who is this person that I am right now? Where am I headed? What has happened in my life that has made me who I am? Which are huge questions that we acknowledge we're asking you to answer at 17. I often think that admissions officers should have to fill out an application every year to just know what we are asking you to do. But
Totally.
that's what we're looking for is that really holistic picture of you.
And I recall that recently Dartmouth also brought back test scores, right,
Yeah.
into the admissions requirement. Can you talk a little bit about the rationale behind that? Because I think that's interesting for people to understand. And then how that figures into that holistic review piece.
Yes. So we do require testing. That's an SAT or an ACT test for us. We don't have a preference between the two. And the reason we reinstated that testing, well, go back a little further. The reason we paused that testing was because of COVID, right? There was less accessibility to get to testing centers. It wasn't safe to put a bunch of people in the same room together taking a test. So we took a pause. And what we did during that time while we were paused is we ran a really big study with Bruce Sacerdote, who's a professor in our economics department, to say, should we bring back testing? Are we actually missing anything if we don't have it? And what that big research project found was essentially that students that were underreporting were actually hurting their application by not telling us their test scores because they were thinking, oh, I don't have a perfect test score, I'm not going to submit it. When in fact, that score that isn't perfect, but is really strong within the context of your high school and your community is actually really helpful for us to see because it is a more standardized thing. So we can see if you're in the top 25% of test takers in your school, you're doing awesome. And so that is what is a helpful metric for us as again, one piece of that holistic puzzle, right? If we see that you are crushing it academically, you're taking high rigor classes, everyone is saying that you are like the most curious person, you're always learning things, you're always reading, you're always doing these things, and then your test score comes in a little lower, great, we're going to know you had a bad day taking a test, right? There's not going to be a moment where we're saying, this test score is not matching up. We're not going to admit the student. We're just using it as one more piece of information. And we brought back the requirement because we found when we were test optional or test suggested that students who really should be telling us their test scores weren't telling them to us. And then we were missing this really helpful piece of data that says, oh my goodness, not only is a student doing great on their transcript, but they're also blowing it out of the park on this amazing test score in the context of where they're coming from.
Awesome. Appreciate you kind of pulling the layers of the onion back on
Yeah.
a little bit. And there was a phrase you used in there about in the context of your high school. I think that'd be, if you could kind of dive into that a little bit more, because one of the things that we hear at Granite Edvance when we're advising students sometimes is, well, I know my friend who goes to school X had the opportunity to take 10 AP classes. My school only has four. Does that disadvantage me when I'm applying to a more selective institution? So with that,
Yeah. Critical question. Context is so key. And so much of our jobs as admissions officers is to learn what the context is that you are coming from and then use that as we're looking at what you're doing. So we are always looking to see what you've done with the resources that were available to you, right? What types of classes were offered at your high school? What types of opportunities were maybe available to you through your high school, through your community? And we're only looking for you to kind of use what's there for you. If your school doesn't offer AP classes, your school doesn't offer AP classes. You can't magically make them offer AP classes. You can try your best to make them if you really want to take them. But what we're really looking for is, are you taking the highest rigor classes that your school is offering? And are you doing well in them? That's what we're looking at. And that's totally different for different schools, right? There are AP curriculums, there are IB curriculums, there are schools that don't even put grades on their transcripts. They write narratives for every student in their classes, right? There are totally different types of high schools and communities that we're reading from. And we're always looking at that context. So as admissions officers, we each have a geography that is our territory. We get to travel there, we get to make connections there. I obviously grew up in New Hampshire, so I know a lot about New Hampshire. And so as I travel around and meet folks in New Hampshire, I still get to see like what types of classes does your school offer? What types of clubs does your school offer? Are you 2 hours from the nearest hospital where you could do research or an internship? Or are you at a hospital and that makes sense while you're doing research, right? Those are all the things we're looking at, but there's no right answer of how you go through things. We just want you to take advantage of the things that are available to you, following your own interests, right? You shouldn't go do research just because someone told you to do research. If you want to do research, great, find those opportunities. But just doing it because someone told you to do it because it will look good for your college application, less fun and exciting.
yeah, awesome. Thanks for that. And my next question is going to be about money, right? Financial aid, scholarships, affordability. But I don't know if it makes sense to level set before that about the different admissions deadlines and how, so that then you can talk about the interplay with financial aid, with early decision versus early action.
Yeah, so our different decision deadlines at Dartmouth are going to be that Quest Bridge application that happens earlier, and that's a match process. If you're interested in that, you can look more into it. And then through the common application, we have early decision and we have regular decision. So early decision is going to be a November 1st deadline. Early decision is a binding single application. So you're going to choose one school to apply to early decision. You're going to sign a contract that says, if I'm admitted, I'm going. And if you are admitted, congratulations, you're going to that school. Regular decision is going to be non-binding, so you can apply to as many schools regular decision as you would like, and then you'll get to see all of the different options there. So you'll get to see your admit or deny or waitlist letters and things throughout the process. Regular decision, you get to see all of those at once and then make your decision. Early decision, you're going to pick one school, you're going to get that decision, and then go from there. So if you're admitted, you're done. If you're not admitted, if you get waitlisted or denied or deferred, you are going to then move into that next round of applications. We don't have early action. So we don't have a non-binding early round, which you might see at some other schools. So you have to know that you want to be at Dartmouth if you're going to apply early here.
Awesome. And then can you talk about how Dartmouth's approach to financial aid, scholarships, affordability as a whole?
Yeah. Dartmouth is really affordable for many people. And I think that this is a hard concept to understand. My family did not get it until I was admitted and saw my financial aid package. Like my dad to this day, we were just talking about it the other day. He's like, there's no way I would have thought, even if you were admitted, that we could afford to send you there. And then it became the most affordable school that I was admitted to. And so the reason that that happens primarily is because we have very generous alumni who give a lot of money to this college to make sure the next generation of students can come here and do that without a financial burden. Some of the ways that that happens is that we practice both need-blind admissions and need-based financial aid. So need-blind admissions means that when I'm reading an application, whether or not you're going to require financial aid, any scholarship, that does not factor into my admissions decision. And then need-based financial aid means that all of our financial aid is based on your demonstrated need. So you're going to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and the CSS profile for us. And that's going to give you a number that says, here is your demonstrated need. And we're going to meet 100% of that demonstrated need. And we're going to do that without requiring you to take out any loans. So that is going to all be scholarship money that you don't need to pay back to cover that difference between your need and the full cost of tuition. 50% of students at Dartmouth are receiving financial aid. That financial aid travels with you if you study abroad. So I studied abroad 3 different times when I was a Dartmouth student, and it didn't cost me any more to be in London or Rome or New York because Dartmouth was covering the difference of cost. So we have really, really generous financial aid. That is, I think, surprising to people. The other thing to know is that we don't have things like merit aid or athletic scholarships because of that need-based aid, that the full Ivy League is like this. We're only giving that need-based aid, so we don't have things where if you have a certain test score, you're going to get this amount of aid. That's not how our financial aid works. And same for athletes. They're going to go through that same financial aid process if they need it and get their need met, but there's nothing extra for being an athlete through that financial aid process.
Yeah, I think people hear IVs and think, oh, unattainable financial. So people will be probably really surprised in some cases to hear that. And I think it's also a good point to underscore for the entire college search process is there's a sticker price versus cost of attendance. So if there's a school you're really interested in, go through the application process and submitting a FAFSA to get that financial aid package before you decide if the finances are going to work for you or not. So sorry, I
Yeah.
had to
And
go
I was
a
gonna say,
little
even
bit
before
Granite
you apply,
Edvance
I would recommend
tangent there.
filling out the net price calculators for
Mhm.
schools, especially schools that are in this kind of highly selective or seem very expensive with their sticker price. A net price calculator, every school that offers federal aid is going to have one for you, and you plug in numbers, and that's going to give you a sense of what you and your family are going to pay
Mhm.
for that school rather than the sticker price. Because yeah, you're right. The sticker price is scary often, and often not what you're actually going to pay to go to that school.
Awesome. So now a student has applied, they've been admitted,
Woohoo.
they have figured out the finances work for them, they've enrolled, they're there. It's the second week of classes in the fall. Uh, what does like a day in the life of a student at Dartmouth look
Yeah.
like?
We are on a quarter system, which I think is important context to know as I talk about a day in the life. So at Dartmouth, we have fall, winter, spring, and summer quarters. They're all 10 weeks long, and there's a break in between each. So typically there's 2 weeks between every quarter. And the exception to that is between fall and winter, there's actually a 6 week break because we end before Thanksgiving and go back after the new year. So knowing all of that, that student would be in week 2 of a 10-week term. Because we're on a quarter system, instead of taking 5 or 6 classes like you might at a semester school at a time, you're going to take an average of 3 classes at a time at Dartmouth. So you're taking less classes at a time, but they're going to move a little bit quicker. So a student would probably have 1 or 2 classes in their day at college life in Dartmouth. And then they would probably spend the rest of that time doing a variety of things, which would be like eating in dining halls, hanging out with their friends, studying for those classes. Because one of the joys of college is that it's kind of the flip of high school, where instead of being in class all day and then going home, you're actually only in class for a little bit of time discussing the things you've done before you got there. And then tons of clubs and organizations. And that could be everything from a cappella and dance groups to club intramural sports to culture-based groups to kind of anything you can possibly imagine. We have a sword fighting club on campus that posters everywhere, and I have yet to see them practice, but I want to find them. Or just like playing spike ball in the green, making food with your friends in the dorm. There's so much that could be happening in a day. But I think the thing to know about Dartmouth is that your days are going to be full of activity. So if you are someone who likes to be doing things, who likes to be involved, I would say the average Dartmouth student is involved in a lot of different clubs and organizations across campus, right? They might be on the debate team, but they might also stay in an a cappella group, and they might be in student government, and they also might be a War and Peace Fellow with the Rockefeller Center. And that is all because that is what they're interested in. And every student is going to have a different path through there. So, unlike in high school where you might be like, I play soccer and that's my jam, students at Dartmouth are playing soccer and dancing and doing other things because they want to be involved. And then spending quite a bit of time on those classes because they are pretty rigorous, they're pretty challenging, they move pretty quickly. But college is really fun after high school, I found, because you have a lot of choice in how you spend your time. You get to go to class, you get to choose your classes a little more carefully than you do in
Mhm.
high school, often with the offerings you have. And then you get to choose how you want to spend your time outside of that.
That's awesome. But I agree that transition from high school to college when I went to school, I went to Plymouth State. So just similar vibe in that rural community, but being able to explore the local region, the mountains, all that has to offer, like as part of the college experience was an amazing perk to what college is. It's not just about the academics, right? That's the core piece that you're there for, but there's so much more to fuel that experience. So correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Mhm.
A 10-week semester is faster, so the course is moved faster. Would that be an accurate summary?
Yes. So the quarters are shorter, which means you're learning the
Mhm.
same material you would learn in the semester in that 10 weeks. So they're definitely going to move faster, but you're doing less of them at a time is kind
Yeah.
of the trade-off.
So all that to set up my next question is a
Yeah.
student going from a high school semester to the shorter timelines. If they are having trouble making that switch, right, what kind of supports is there to help them academically, and also personally, like making that transition from high school to college? And then I guess it's a three-part question. When you get near the end, throughout their time, like in their professional goals, what are those support services for students like?
Yeah, so many. There are so many things. I think the helpful reminder that is challenging when you go to college, right? There's a lot of imposter syndrome that can be felt in college because you're going somewhere new and you're like, should I be here? Do they mean to admit me here? What am I doing? But especially at a place like Dartmouth, almost every single student starting their first year fall is encountering this quarter system for the very first time. There are very few high schools in the United States or anywhere that are running on this calendar. So you have a lot of peer support from folks around you saying, wow, this is very different. How do we navigate this together? And then on top of that, there are so many different places on campus that will help you. I think the things that are kind of most academic based, we have the undergraduate dean's office who are there to make sure everyone is doing well. They're there to kind of keep an eye. If your grades are falling and they want to check in with you, they'll reach out and make sure that you have the support you need and connect you with these offices. We also have the Academic Skills Center that not only is there to kind of help with peer-to-peer tutoring or help with the writing center, but they also teach classes about time management, about calendaring, about how to have the best study skills in this setting. So that is a center on campus. And then throughout your college experience, because we're on this quarter system and there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of choice, there are kind of infinite mentors on campus to help you figure that out. And that's everything from that undergraduate dean I mentioned to once you have a major, you'll have a major advisor who's a professor in the department. You will have the upperclassmen in the clubs that you're a part of and the upperclassmen in the majors you're a part of who are sharing the things they've done. We also have things like the Rockefeller Center for Public Policy, the Dickey Center for International Understanding. There's a Tucker Center, which is a lot of religious life on campus, but also a lot of service-based opportunities. And then we also have a Center for Career Design that is there to kind of help you from the very beginning. They fund internships. They help you figure out how to put your best foot forward when you're applying for internships, applying for jobs. They run a lot of the job fairs that come to campus. So there are things constantly happening on campus to make sure that you are not only here and existing, but thriving while you're here and finding the supports you need and encouraging you to use those supports because they are here for all of our students.
Awesome. Sounds like great wraparound services to make sure that
Yeah.
students are thriving in all aspects of their life. So, as we kind of near the end of the conversation, if there's a misconception out there about Dartmouth that you'd like to take this moment to finally set the record straight on, what do you think that would be?
So many. But I think the one that immediately came to mind as someone who grew up in New Hampshire and grew up down the road from this place and never saw myself here,
Mhm.
um, is that I think there's a misconception about who the student body is at Dartmouth. And I think probably that misconception was maybe true 50 years ago. And so I think there are a lot of folks who still think of Dartmouth as like a very white, very wealthy, very Northeast boarding school population of students. And certainly those students exist on this campus. But there is such a shift in the student body here and the desire to have students that are bringing so many different lived experiences to our campus. And I think there are a lot of students who will say no to themselves before they even apply to Dartmouth. And you should apply. If you see Dartmouth as a place that is the right fit for you, we have the programs you want, we have the opportunities you want. Let us be the ones to say no at some point if we need to. Don't discourage yourself because I never would have applied to Dartmouth as a student unless I did the community high school program, which is a program that allows students within 50 miles of Dartmouth to take classes at Dartmouth if you've exhausted your high school curriculum. And I took some math classes because I had taken all the math at my high school and was like, wow, I'm actually doing fine in these classes. Like I thought these Dartmouth students were somehow like a different type of human that could
Right.
do things in different ways. They're also just human beings that happen to find this place and know that it's available to them and have the confidence to apply. So I think the more you can set yourself up for success with really finding the schools that are the right fit for you, and of course make a balanced list of schools, right? We are a highly selective school. I think our admit rate last year was about 6%. So at a certain point, you can't put all your eggs in all the baskets of the 6% admit schools. But if there's a school that is a really good fit for you and you see yourself there, you should apply. You should not tell yourself no before that school has even read your application because there are students on this campus from all over the world, from so many different places. There are students from schools where there were 12 students in the whole school. There are students from schools where there were 4,000 people in their graduating class, right? There are so many different types of folks on this campus. And you should apply if you want to be here. I think come take a tour, come meet some students, come see what it actually feels like here. And it might not be for you still, but the
Mhm.
opportunities and resources that are available here feel so foreign and so out of reach, I think, for so many students coming from New Hampshire. And it is such an unbelievable opportunity if you do end up coming here and are admitted and get to be a student. And so go for it if it's what you want.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great spot to kind of end things on. Really aspirational, and I think it's a great message for people to hear about the entire college search process, Dartmouth and other schools, right? Something may feel maybe just out of reach for you, but take the shot, right? And let the school work with you in that process. Jaclyn, I want to thank you for taking the time today to join me for this conversation, to give kind of an insider's look into Dartmouth College, all that offers, to dispel some misconceptions. Um, for those watching, if you want to learn more, head over to Dartmouth's website. And Jaclyn, if you'd be open to it, would you mind dropping your email in the chat for people to reach out to you directly? Um, for those watching, this episode will be posted on the Granite Edvance website after a little bit of time for processing the episode. And I'll email it out to everybody who registered as well as those who attended today. So if at any point you want to revisit, you'll have that at your disposal. Also, feel free to share it. It'll come as a YouTube link, so it's not hidden behind anything. And just as a reminder, College Conversation will be continued to be aired throughout the rest of July, August, and early September, with most of the institutions in the state being represented. So we'd love to have you join us for future conversations. Our next one coming up is Nashua Community College. So hope to have some of you join us for those conversations. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can jump into Q&A, and then yeah, open up for Q&A. You can use the chat or the Q&A function.